So I finally watched a kind of an old film, not really very old. I mean, comparison to what I usually watch sometimes. Anyway, I mean, I watch from every era really. So could be one from 100 years ago as well. Although I don't think I've commented yet on that old of a movie yet. I have seen though. I've seen those earliest clips by what was he called again? Miller or something. Anyway, I have watched a Bollywood movie this time. I think it's Bollywood anyway. Or at least produced by quite prolific actor director there. Yeah, I don't actually watch many Bollywoods. They produce a lot. I think they produce. What is it? I think they're the most prolific industry. I think. Not sure if maybe possibly Nollywood might be. I think for all the how renowned Hollywood is, though they're not the most prolific. Yeah. Anyway, I've watched this like Stars on Earth, right, from 2007, and the first hour and a half, shall we say, was quite painful. I guess I can say why they did that though. Obviously, you sort of need a thesis and then a counter thesis to sort of the counter though was a bit uneven in my opinion. It seems like on average it's quite highly rated by people, and I can see why. I can certainly see more than I can see many others in the same average high rating category, but it wasn't perfect still. Then again, no movie is, I suppose, but um, I just think they went a bit too far with the thesis part. I mean, I know they were trying to show well what happens locally, but um, it's very awkward and irritating when seen. I mean, because ultimately I don't know if it might promote it or such, but yeah, I'm referring to, of course, the violence, although not just any violence. I mean, it's one thing for children to fight each other, but it's very painful to see that, on top of that, you get his own father, just on top of it, despite, very visually, obviously, he's been hurt as well. I mean, his father was a bastard, right? I'll just say that straight away. No amount of crying at the end will really, I mean, what viewers would need to be naive to just forgive him just because he cries at the end. I don't know why they made him cry, because it's ridiculous. I mean, if he resorts to violence for every little thing, then I don't see how he is capable of such redemption, shall we say, that is implied by crying. It's he didn't do anything in the end. I mean, in a way, he did rebut him quite well in a sense. He told him, yeah, you think you're caring when you're not. And he brought about analogies and such about cursing, and that he saw himself in that, when he curses, but he did more than just curse him, obviously. Um, you know, I mean, yeah, I guess the teacher didn't learn that he was also violent towards him, so I don't know how else he would have reacted if he knew. Because otherwise, I'd still like to mean how the teacher reacted. I mean, obviously, this is I've seen other American movies before. I think the other that might have directed. I actually, is this directed by him? I'm not entirely sure. Might have been likely, but yeah, I've seen other stuff. I've seen this, the one with the alien, where he's an alien. They all tend to be sort of similar. Um, I I do sort of like his movies, what he does. So it's not like, I don't have any disinclination towards what he does. But I don't know, they tend to be sort of too sweet and too uh, perfect and such, sort of, at the end at least. At the beginning, obviously, I don't know. What did he, yeah, yeah, apparently I've watched at least a couple of others in the so-called top 250 here. Although one of them I didn't really like that much. Three Idiots. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while now, anyway, so can't quite tell. But I don't know. For all the frivolous comedy it had, it was quite serious as well. I mean, it had a lot of suicides, from what I remember. So I don't know. I didn't like it that much though. I liked this better though. I think. I also liked the other one as well, where he acts as an alien. What was that called again? I forgot. Let's see if we can find it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why they need to include violence. So I don't know why it seems necessary sometimes. Like any kind of violence. Violence between two sort of equals. Is I guess acceptable. But when you get unequals, it's just awful. And you cannot just discount it by saying, well, that's local customs. That's absurd. That's just awful. Yeah. Yeah, the other one I liked by him. No, he hasn't directed it actually. He's just an actor. Is PK, the one with the alien. Yeah, I did like that. It had a lot of religious themes to it too. Not unlike this one. I don't think. I think religion was referenced once in this movie I just watched, just once in passing, not really much more than that. So the other one, though, I think was more because from what I remember, he claimed to be an alien sent by God or something. I haven't seen it for a while though as well, so I cannot quite, review it in a meaningful sense because of that. This one though, yeah, I did like, but I didn't like the first half, so I'm conflicted. I mean, obviously, in terms of like when I know that he was found really. I mean, the actor came in on the screen very late on, really, very later, as in after an hour and a half or something. So I didn't know. I mean, how realistically how much difference it could make, really. And I did think that what difference could an hour and a half make? And then they had that montage where they were sort of like what they do when it comes to like physical training or something, and it's a bit hard to believe. I mean, with physical training, maybe, but I don't know, when it comes to learning how to read and write, I find it hard to believe you could do that with in a few like well, I don't know what it was. They didn't explicitly spell it out, but maybe days, weeks, or months, possibly. I don't think it was years. I don't think it was a single year. So a bit difficult to see how someone could. I mean, sure enough, he didn't have that kind of help before, so I guess that makes a difference. And in that sense, if somebody does find such help, then they're just lucky. Right, as simple as that. But even if they do find it, I don't know how likely it is for them to learn so quickly within a few days or weeks or months. Yeah, a bit far-fetched, but never mind. This is a movie, obviously. It cannot be a movie of lasts months, obviously. Maybe it could, but even series do not last months, obviously. So I don't know. And the first hour, I mean, as I say, is just one of those, it was yeah, it was a bit, but as I can see why they, but I wish they didn't include the parental violence mainly, or maybe at least they rebutted it thoroughly, because that's just, you know, because that's the thing, I mean, since they didn't, well, as I say, you could say, he simply just didn't discover that that happened. So I suppose, he couldn't rebut it in that sense. But um, I still think, I mean, obviously, as a director and a scriptwriter, they know that it was there. So I don't know, maybe they could have somehow made him discover and rebut it appropriately. Maybe not literally, I mean, mirroring it like he did in terms of, when he rebutted his accusations of not paying attention or being rebellious, etc. That's my favorite thing, by the way, when he did that, right? I mean, that was honestly the most comedic as well, I think. I mean, generally didn't have much comedy, mostly it had serious scenes, but when he did that, though, it was utterly brilliant, right? He just showed him, he didn't even know what language it was, right? Now, I cannot read it myself either, but I can still tell the difference between Chinese and Japanese scripts. And he couldn't even do that, let alone read it. But that was brilliant the way he did it, right? He started accusing him of not paying attention, of being rebellious and such, so he could understand. That should really be done with absolutely everyone who thinks similarly. This is how things work, really, how you sort of reflect upon them, Obviously, when it comes to violence, it's obviously much more difficult, obviously, but something should have been done to rebut it, as opposed to, just setting up the scene by, having his father be violent and then it just disappears into nothing. See, even at the very beginning, even his mother was violent, although only once, I think, from what I remember. Later on, she did display kindness. His father never did, really, besides crying, but that's just pathetic. Um, his mother is strange, I guess, as well. I mean, she didn't display, I mean, as brutal as such brutal violence like his father did. But even at the beginning, I mean, I don't know why, she slapped him. But I suppose, this sort of countered by her later kindness, I suppose, where, she does show more compassion, I guess, by the end of the movie than she does brutality like his father. His father is the sort of person one shouldn't forgive, even if they cry, that's just pathetic, I mean, he did nothing. He just contributed to, his destruction, really. And so in a way, it's a movie of extremes in a way. I mean, I don't know, movies can end up being like this just because of the sheer effect that they're movies. This is the problem with movies, with films. I suppose, I don't know. I mean, yeah. On average, it seems to have been well received by people. I don't know if that's because they did set up this thing where you get all the negatives at the beginning and all the positives at the end. It's a bit extreme like that, though. A bit uneven as well in terms of time, but not just. But yeah, there are, I guess, more negatives than positives, possibly. Yeah, in terms of the animation they made, so I like the animation. I mean, any movie, any live action movie that includes animation is, positive in my opinion. A bonus always. What's disappointing is that they didn't include more of it in a way. They didn't at the end as well. So I don't know why, because you'd think that's where his imagination is going off script and such wild. They only did a bit with regards to the painting, the mixing colors and such, but that's not much of an animation really. At the beginning, thought they used claymation and such, I like that. I like the sequence with the planets and how he divided based using the planets. Absolutely like that. But then obviously that then comes a disappointment soon after because that's the only sum he did and such. But yeah, that's included. It's always. But overall, I did like how they addressed the situation with dyslexia, which is sort of similar, I guess, to the way, I mean, not that they're directly comparable, but obviously with the last movie I watched, they sort of did the same with bullying, but that was a more, not a lesson as such, more of a, hypothetical of what could happen if bullying occurred and such, taken to extremes as well, though, so I guess. But this, on the other hand, yeah, no, I like his explanations of how dyslexia happens, and then obviously he was, trying to make the children think positively about such conditions by mentioning people who succeeded. Of course, realistically. I mean, if he had to tell the whole picture, if he told them, these 10 succeeded, but for every 10 who succeeded, there were thousands, if not more, who didn't. The picture is depressing once again, because that's the reality ultimately. I mean, I'm not entirely sure about the statistics, but they probably are. Then again, I mean, it's sort of the same for people who don't have such conditions, so it's not like, people who do succeed are generally the minority, so, but otherwise, as a movie, it is what it is, I suppose. They did take it a bit, they did make it a bit caricatural, at the end. Like, literally, they painted the teachers as caricatures at the end. And the whole thing was a bit of a caricature as well, though. Not too much, but it sort of was. I think it might have been better if Amir was brought in early, I thought. I think it was, as I said, it was too uneven. If we must consider like a sort of a ratio between the negatives and the positives. And I guess that would have been slightly better if he was brought in earlier. I just thought, for the huge length time this had, it wasn't totally very even. I mean, obviously they didn't use maths or anything to calculate exactly how equilateral they must be or something. No, that wouldn't be. I guess movies are more artistic than mathematical, but ultimately it still had more negatives than positives. That's why I'm a bit split over it. And yeah, in a way, I mean, all of Amir's movies seem to be alike as well. They're all about him being childlike, looking at the world from a childlike perspective. And, so I don't know if he's typecasting himself. I suppose maybe he wants it. I think he does. I don't think he seems to have a passion for it, to be fair. But I don't know. It just so I mean, all right. So let's establish the fact that So in this case, then this movie, his father did try to he was a violent bastard, but he tried to approach it at one point, at least, when he resorted to what's verbal instead of what's violent, mindlessly violent. He did resort to, shall we say, once again, approaching it from a worldly perspective, I guess one could say, practical, that is, in terms of, what, how the children, that is, could cope when they go out to the world and try to have a career and such. Of course, though, he didn't respond straight away. I mean, he did sort of show him at the end how it's done, how it could be done. I guess he sort of showed the audience as well that there are other ways that one could do it, and certainly violence does not work. Of course, that's a thing. Since the teacher didn't technically know about the violence, then he didn't even address it at all. That's one oversight, I guess one could say. But so in a way, he tried to, approach it from a pragmatic point of view, but he wasn't really. His actions weren't pragmatic. At least he tried to ask pragmatic questions, but the way he acted wasn't pragmatic at all. Whatever he did doesn't solve anything whatsoever. So I don't know. Just yeah. I don't know. His father was very one-dimensional in a way. Just because so the only difference would be concerning all his actions, the only difference would be at the end where he cried and sort of felt a bit of shame. That's the only difference, but it's still very much one-dimensional. Or if anything, he's like 99% violent and 1% somehow remorseful, possibly. It's not like he was remorseful specifically about the violence, because that wasn't mentioned. It was just about caring and such, or not caring in his case, So in a way, it's not a perfect movie because the father, at the very least, is one-dimensional. The mother is less so. She has more facets to her. She seems more caring. She seems troubled as well, so and such. But his brother, on the other hand, I don't know. He's a bit of a caricature as well somehow. He seems to somehow they made them opposites. How he succeeds at everything somehow, and only one subject is somehow 2 points less somehow. He did also fail in the tennis match, so I guess that's another sort of failure. But this is the thing, his father was such a huge one-dimensional caricature in this sense. He displayed violence at every turn, so much so that even when he failed at tennis match, I expected him to resort to violence as well. He never resorted to violence in the end on his second child, his older one. But he was so violent, I honestly expected him to do that. And it's sort of a pity when you expect a character to act in such a way in any movie, That just implies that, well, that's what they do. That's the only thing they do. So, I think that's the biggest flaw in this movie. Other than that, obviously Amir's character is sort of the opposite of that. So, but then could one say he is also one-dimensional? Yeah, I'm not sure. He comes out, all, jingles and fanfare, but then he discovers there's a problem and he becomes serious. So he's not one-dimensional because he doesn't. I guess he would be if he tried to cheer him up by just singing and such, and then somehow he recovered from his depression just through that. That would be more simplistic, I suppose. So the way it was done was more practical, was more realistic as well, possibly. Obviously not in terms of the timeline and such, but let's discount that for now. But otherwise, he wasn't too bad of a character. He's never too bad of a character generally. He just didn't come very early on, though. As early, as I think might have been better for. I think if he did, I don't know. Just there were so many bad teachers before, so many arrogant ones. This is the thing, though. When movies rehabilitate them, like even in what was it called again? The obscure movie I once watched. Goliath something. It was also a sort of a trial at a feel-good movie and such. It had tribulations as well, but then it had positivity and and positives as well. Grace and Goliath, yeah, and like the only seriously negative character it had, the one who acted terribly throughout, somehow was rehabilitated at the end for no apparent reason. He just was. He became an actor, whatever. I mean, what? That's nonsense, you know. Even more of a nonsense in a way than this one. At least in this way, you just get to see him cry for some reason, not something as ridiculous as becoming an actor, you know. Well, I mean, they are actors, but you know, within the storyline itself. So you know, the other movie was more simplistic in the sense. This obviously, I mean, even in terms of the average rating, it is obviously seen to be better, well, more popular as well. But anyway, but still, it has flaws. I'm not saying it doesn't. And the way they rehabilitate, though, many teachers as well. Yeah, other teachers. I mean, well, they kind of rehabilitate the father, but you know, maybe not quite as much. But even the others, you know, so they go from, you know, insulting him, insulting the child, you know, just tormenting him practically from both schools as well. Like, it's incredible. Like, what's the point of the second school if they do the same thing? So they go from that to somehow, oh, drawing like children themselves and laughing. I don't know. It just all the problems weren't addressed. I mean, you know, this wasn't an issue about them not being able to draw, was it? This was about them just insulting children when they could have done better. Like at the scene where he interpreted that poem, you know, that's ridiculous. Just like Rajun said, you know, the one who sat next to him. What's the point? That's the whole point of poetry. It's interpretive. What's the point of these teachers? I swear, if that was me, you know, whether I was an assistant teacher or a student, I just tell him off. What's the point of this? Like, sure enough, you could say exactly, you know, literally what happened, you know, in terms of the, you know, about the river and such. But what's the point? Like, yeah, the poem does mention a river, so yeah, sure enough, you could just mention it again. But what he said was even more interpretive, and that's really what should be done with poems. I mean, sure, you could expand upon it, but you know, what he said was abstract and say, you know, it should be commended, not insulted. So, you know, this is what I don't get, why such movies, you know, have negatives, and they don't even try to, you know, correct those negatives. Like in fact happened with his, you know, saying that, you know, with the father saying, oh, he's rebellious, he's not paying attention, and then the art teacher comes and says, well, try to read Japanese. He doesn't even know he's Japanese, you know? And that was a brilliant scene. That was the best scene, as I said. But they didn't do the same thing with the other teachers, or the other issues with his father himself. So that would have made it, I think, more perfect. I think, in my opinion. I suppose, you know, it can never be absolutely perfect, but it would have been better, I think, in my opinion. Yeah, since it wasn't done, something was missing. But then again, I mean, I kind of like it more than Three Idiots in this sense, because I don't know, Three Idiots didn't have much of a point, I suppose, and this sort of did. Not that points necessarily have anything to do, you know. I don't remember myself, though. I guess even if it was much more, it was quite. I mean, at the end, especially, it was kind of, you know, blunt in a way, the way they did it, you know, with the amphitheater and everything. That was quite a, you know, unsubtle sort of direction, and how he won. Obviously, it's not even a spoiler; it's to be expected, yeah, you know. And so it's a bit, you know, yeah. Obviously, and then there's the issue as well of, you know, the painting. I mean, I don't know how likely it is for a child to really paint like that. I mean, it was practically Picasso or something, you know. Yeah, that's a bit unrealistic as well. But, you know, just possible, I suppose. I don't know. Also, the fact that he painted a war scene earlier was a bit as well, like, I don't know where he got that from. It's not, I mean, maybe it's to be expected if he came from, you know, war-torn country, but I don't know honestly where he could have drawn that from, unless he's a war movie aficionado or something. So there were a few you know, in this movie, but otherwise it wasn't too bad, I suppose one could say. wasn't perfect though either. I just wish they didn't do the parental violence thing. You know, just like really, and I hate that. You know, it detracts a lot. But otherwise, at the end and such, and the animation, they were positives. Yeah, they really were. But it's still,